Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. It's Thursday. This will be our chart lesson for today. And just a reminder, won't be any chart lesson tomorrow. Um, if the weather's good, I'm gonna probably take the whole morning off. So I'll still try to do the um, midday chart lesson. So I'll still probably post that before I leave out for the day. And like I said, if the weather's bad, I may trade. So we'll just have to see. But I'm planning on taking off earlier than normal tomorrow if possible. But let's get to the chart. One other thing before we start the lesson today. I got a couple of emails that the clicking noise was back again yesterday, and I apologize. I did a few tests this morning, and we didn't have any problems. Seems like every now and then, if I don't restart my machine, I'm thinking maybe it gets low on memory or something, and but I've kind of correlated it to not on those days when sometimes I leave my machine going and it's still running and I come back and that seems to be when it's doing it. So I'm going to make sure I shut it down every night and restart it every morning. So that could be it. We'll just have to play it by ear. It's just so sporadic. I don't really know what causes it. We thought we had it narrowed down to my cell phone being too close. That doesn't seem to be the case, and I thought, well, I've got a regular wireless phone line here for, a landline. I've made sure that's not too close, and sometimes that phone's laying right here in my lap, and it still doesn't do it. So I'm not sure what's going on, but we'll keep working on it and hopefully get it resolved. But I did want to comment on that. I'm going to I'll be restarting my machine every night. I'm going to turn it off before I leave. Um, I do most nights anyway, but occasionally I'll leave it running, and I'm wondering if, it seems like that may have something to do with it. So I'm going to test that a little bit and see if that resolves it. But let's talk about the chart lesson. Early on, I saw a two-tiered channel working higher, and that's exactly what we've got here. Turns out that maybe it's a bigger pattern two-tiered channel. There's actually a midline within. I was looking at this channel right here early on, and you can see it's valid. We came up short here, then we overshot it. On this side, got the break, and we didn't get any reversal though. Actually, we got the break and a new high, and this is good enough. This is a good explanation here. This is close enough for a correction, and then the trend can continue. And a lot of people get confused on that. They think that when you get the break of the trend line and a new high, it means you get a reversal. It just means you're going to get a correction. Sometimes that correction is something like this. Usually you'll get at least about an hour minimum correction. So let's see what we got. We made the new high about 1 o'clock my time. Of course, that's when the news came out too. We had FOMC news today, and you can see it got a little squirrely in here. But the price action is still valid. We overshot here. We overshot up here. Again, let's see how long the correction lasted. We made the new high about 1 o'clock, right into the news, and the correction, well, it only lasted till about 1:30. So we just may be able to write this whole thing off to the news, I guess. But right in here, you just want to stay out of that. There's no direction at all. We did have a move down, a break, and a new low. And I think you just want to kind of stay out of this. I did mark one other trade down here right after the 12 o'clock. Usually by 12 noon, I prefer to be flat. But there's a nice little trap down here, and this was the first break, so I thought it was probably worth taking to see, you still got time to get out. And then this one's a little iffy too because it's only about 10 minutes into the news, but I marked it anyway. And this part right here, you just kind of got to stay out of it. And there's one last trade right in the 2 o'clock hour. So evidently the market liked what it heard today, and had a nice rally. We're back above 2,000 again. It was just a few days ago. A week ago, we were at 18 in the 1800s. So we rallied pretty nice, pretty strongly, and had a nice move up. So, but let's back out, talk about the trades. Here's another thing that's a good learning opportunity. Even though this is an uptrend and has an upward bias to it, notice how prices are constantly swinging on both sides of the EMA. That still means the market has somewhat of a range type feel. So generally you can trade it both ways if you want. It's always better to stay with the bias, which it's up. You can see this is moving up, but it is flat. So if you want to trade it both ways, you can. So just remember that. Um, but it does have a slightly upward bias here. But you can see how prices are above the EMA and they're below it just as much as they're above it. So um, that gives it, and there is a range right across here. You can see that we kind of went into a range. And if you measure that, you're looking, when we went higher, you would have been looking for a measured move up. And you can see we maybe missed that by a tick there. Oops, deleted the wrong line. So that would have been looking for a target up here once you broke higher. So that's something to think about as well. But let's back out a little more, talk about the trades, and I'm going to wrap it up for today. Notice that we had a trend coming down. We tried to go lower a couple of times and trap people. You got that reversal type pattern, and it's kind of working back. And notice the new high, pullback, first entry, pullback. This is the second entry. That's a big, nice reversal bar. It looked like it was going to be bearish and go lower, but you got this little trend channel working up. And notice you did get an overshoot, which led to the break, and that's always a good clue. And this was the second. There's actually technically the second entry triggered here. It's not a very good setup, but I looked at this as all being one leg. Even though it went higher there temporarily, you can see it's all kind of one leg. And if you went to a slightly larger pattern, you'd probably see a second entry. So really, for all intents and purposes on this chart, it's not a second entry. So, but you could treat it like one. You could also look at this. There's a little bit of a double bottom there. It's a failed break lower. This is a little bit like a trading range. There's a lot of overlap. It's like a failed break lower. There's a couple of different reasons I like it. It was a quick, easy scalp, but then it turns back down. But notice it makes a higher low there. And this looks tempting to go short here. But notice how we've bounced there multiple times. So you don't want to go short right there, especially when you got a trend line working higher and there's just kind of a midline right across there. But notice that support right across there. And so you don't want to go short right in there. When it turned down and turned up, I mean, it could have just kept going, and you're probably going to say, well, I missed a good trade, but you would rather miss that trade than get sucked in there and get reversed. But when it reversed and went out the other side, I like this for a long. It's a pretty big bar. You could just have your stop right there, because you're probably going to make a retest on this, and that's what it does before it tries to correct, and it just keeps kind of working back and forth and going higher. But if you wanted, you could wait on the break above this bar and drop a limit order back here, and you could have got filled a tick or so back in that bar. Then it takes off, and it just kind of gets hung up again. There's a possible short right here. Originally, I had this line a little lower too. I actually had it on the closes right there. And notice it ticks up and turns down. And there are a lot of matching highs there. So this is like a failed break out of congestion. So there's a short there, and we do have a new high. It's a first entry. I'll give it a green one. I don't think you want to look at that as being a red. But looking at it after the fact, I think that there's some people that probably want to trade that. So that's a kind of aggressive. You're better off to wait on the second entry, but it comes way down here, and you don't get a very good signal bar. Now that would be a fairly decent bar if you could get a break below it and then maybe try to get in back up. But it never happens. In fact, it pulls up and it turns back down and it fails and turns up again. But notice too, you got a break of this little trend line down in a new low, and then you get that little trap and it turns up. So I like going long right there. And again, it's swinging both ways, so you can kind of go can kind of enter both ways. And then this should be right here, not over there. This is a second entry long after the low here. Look what happens. You get a new high, pull back first entry, pull back second entry. But this is not a great signal bar, so that's the reason it's not blue. It's also the first break of this little channel working up, so you're probably going to get a push back up to the top. And we're coming off the midline, so there's a good chance we go all the way back to this line. It doesn't quite make it, but you know, that's what you're expecting before, you know, when it looks like this to the far right side. So this looks like a trap, and there's actually a failed second entry short there, so it's tempting to go long right there, because that's even though that's got a little red, it's a fairly bullish bar. So you might have even thought about getting in right there, but this is more like congestion. This is like a little failed breakout. So I think you're better off to wait and see if you don't get a second entry with the trend or some kind of trap, and you get that right here. And that's not a real bullish bar. So again, I'm only going to get a green when it's kind of an aggressive long. I think you're better off just to kind of stay out of that and stay out of all of this. And it finally works its way lower. There's a second entry short right here counting off the high, but again, it breaks higher, but then it can't go out the other side. So it's right there at the EMA again. So I don't really like it either. And then it tries to go lower again. Notice that you kind of got that support across there, and it tests it a couple of different times and then turns up. So if it would have ticked lower again, I would have liked it even better. But what I liked about this one was this is a big, huge bullish bar, but you can't really go. It's going to be really hard to get in that. In fact, it's not really hard. It's impossible to get in that with a 2-point stop. So what you might want to do is try to see if it breaks higher and get back in here a tick or two and try to get a little better entry. And you could have, and then it pushes up because you want to get out before it gets back up to here because it's a lot of resistance across there. So again, that one's a little aggressive, and there's, you know, but what I was looking at is notice that it tests it once, pulls up, it comes back and tests it twice, and then it takes off. So it's like the double test rule there as well. And then it takes off. And then it's tempting to go short right here. And it would have worked, but it does pull up and go higher again. But you got this resistance across here. And it's turning down twice right off of that. But I think you're better off to wait on the next attempt because there's actually, I don't have it on here. There's actually a trend line working up through there, like so. And you get a close outside and a move to a new high. You can see that little channel working there. And you get a close outside of it here, and you're working higher, and you get a new high. So it's tempting to go short right there. And if you did, it would have worked. But I think you're better off to wait and see if you get a second entry off this side. And even though this went a tad bit higher, I'd still call this a second entry. The closes are still lower, and the open's still lower. And look how bearish that bar is. And it didn't even, it just kind of shot straight past it there and went lower. It was really the prices were really working hard to come back down through. I don't know what the deal was. They would run up, but by the time the bar would close, it's like it wasn't a lot of selling going on, but people weren't really buying it right in here. So it was kind of interesting to watch the price action right there. And if you were trading in, you know what I'm talking about. It was just kind of interesting price action. It wasn't that people were really selling it hard. They just would buy it a little bit and stop. It's like they couldn't get enough. Evidently, there was some people unloading some contracts in here. And, you know, so even though they weren't selling, they would sell into the buying spurts. But anyway, I like this bar here, and it moved down really quick, so you had to really come back. And when I see those gaps, I usually like to put me a limit order right there instead of maybe using the where it would normally go, because it'll usually come back and fill that, and it did. It pulled back and filled it to the tick and then turned right back down, and you would have gotten out before you got back down to these lows. And so I like that one for a short. And then, of course, when it bounces right off these lows and it bounces right off that trend line, I really would look at this as your signal bar, even though this is a signal bar as well. They got matching lows. If you used this as your signal bar, the one with a little bit of a red, I would let it break up higher and then maybe use a limit order. But you're better off really to wait on this bar, and a break of it, use a stop. And you can tell that this trend line is valid because it's closing. You can see how everything's closing above that bar. And this turns out to be a nice trade. And a lot of times those little failed break lower like that are really good trades. And then boom, it takes off. And then it pulls back right here. You really should have had this a little bit higher by that time. And again, this is one of those where I don't think I would have used a stop when it turned and went higher. I would have, when it broke higher, I would have dropped a limit order back here and gotten a little better entry so that you could get out before you got here. It didn't. It ended up not mattering. It didn't matter in the end because it went straight on through, but you don't know that you're going to get through that, and a lot of times you'll touch it and turn down again. So it was a little iffy if you went long at the high right into that. You're better off to let it break higher and then drop a limit order and get a little better entry, and it would have worked for you. But then notice you're working up, you get a first entry, you pull back, you get a second entry, and it fails and prices turn up. So I like going long there, and it's a breakout pullback long. I don't like going long above that one, but when it went lower and then turned back up and broke above that one, I like entering above that one. And that's a second entry long counting off this high. Pull back first entry, pull back second entry. You don't get a lower low, but you get a little, this high is lower than that one, so it's still like a correction again. And so I like that second entry, and there's a breakout pullback long and a failed second entry short. There's a couple different reasons to like that one for the long. And you figure you're probably headed back up here at this point. It works higher, but it doesn't get there. And then you're working. I actually need to put, I don't have this short-term trend line on there. But you can see prices working up through there, and you get your break, and you're looking for a new high there too. So you can see that. And you get your high here. You don't want to go short on this, and you were looking for a measured move up here too. Remember, based on this channel, and notice how the closes had moved down. So you would end up adjusting this back down. And it ends up looking the best right across there, getting them as far as the support, and that gave you the measured move up to here. So, so it's tempting to go short, but you don't really get a good signal bar there. And then it turns up here. Now it did break higher and go right out the low side of that bar right there. So, you know, you probably could give that a green circle, a little more aggressive. So I like that when it does that. If the rest of the price action tells you you're probably going down, and you do have your breaking new high, and there's pretty much two swings up to a new high, and that's that reversal pattern. Look how prices shot right through that EMA. There's no resistance there at all. Not much. There's not really any resistance on the midline of this two-tiered channel, and then it pulls back, and then it traps people when it ticks up there, and it goes right out the other side. Yeah, this one's borderline being red, so it's real close. And you came up short here. You didn't quite get back up to that midline. So you get your break here. Then you pull back, you get a first entry short. Pulls back, you get a second entry short. And some of you might have been tempted to go short there, but that's not a good place to go short. You've had two legs down, a huge move down. You just bounced off the low here. You're not back to the kind of midpoint of this. You just had a break of the two-tiered channel. You're probably going to get a retest to make a new high. You don't want to be going short right there. But when you get this failed second entry short, and that's what they did, they just trapped people there, then put your stop there and go long. And that's a quick, easy move, and you could have ridden this all the way up into the. I would have exited somewhere in here before the news came out. I promise you that. And let's remember which bar that news came out on. It's right there. So yeah, I probably would have just scalped out of that and been done with it. If you even took it at all. It's about 12, just a little bit after 12. I would be out by 12:30. So if you'd have rode that up till 12:30. But I think you're smarter to be out before the new, before FOMC news, any kind of high volatility news, low volatility stuff or stuff that doesn't affect the market. Don't worry about that. But FOMC news is not one that you want to play around with because it can get really weird and volatile, and you can see how quick it moved up. But generally, when you get a move like that, this is something I always like to talk about. It usually will take it right back and reset. And guess what? Not very long after, it's come all the way back and it's kind of reset and working forward again. Um, this one's really probably too early into the stuff, but I marked it anyway. But notice you're moving down, you get a break, a new low. You try to go lower, it bounces, it tries to come back, it confirms that trend line, then it tries to come back again, confirms it again, and then it breaks higher right there. So I like going long there if you're, if it's moving slow enough for you to read all that, because it's another two attempts to go lower and it bounces off that trend line and just keeps going higher. Once you went into this, just stay out of this because you get long, and I've seen this happen. I mean, I've done it myself back in the old days before I knew any better. You get long there and then it turns down. You get short there and oh shoot, and then it gets long, and you reverse and you just get chopped to pieces. Just sit and wait. The odds are we're going higher because you see this new trend line and we bounced off of it twice. You just never really get a setup here though to go long because that's a doji and that closed in the middle. So that is a 1 bar trading range. And you know what happens generally when you enter out of a trading range, it breaks higher and turns down and goes the other way. But this takes off. So, but I just don't see any entry there unless you entered over here. I think you're better off to stay out of this. There's a breakout pullback long right there. And it is a failed second entry short. So I probably should have that one blue as well because it is a trap and there is a double midline there. So when you see two or three different reasons to enter a trade, but notice that new low. That low is lower than that one. So you got a new count there, and that's a first entry and a second entry, and it fails real quick. And so that one probably should be blue as well. And then you get one more second entry. Notice the new high, pull back first entry, pull back second entry. That's a nice bullish bar there. Go long and look at it go. And at this point, you're figuring, hey, now that we're getting above this multiple times, hey, maybe there's another line up here and you draw an equal distance, and that's exactly where it goes to. It even overshoots that one a tad. But that got you into the 2 o'clock hour. So, again, the bias was mostly up. It got a little flat in here, and we're swinging both sides of the EMA, so it's kind of a neutral day with a upward bias, slightly upward bias, and that's the only way you can look at it. I mean, from here on, it was pretty much a strong trend up, and it's look how everything's above the EMA now, and it stays that way. So don't be counter trend trading once it starts going straight up like that. This is a much steeper two-tiered channel as well. So. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Not much else we can talk about today. It was a pretty good trading day. It's been a pretty good week. Hopefully you've had a good week. We'll be back again to do it Monday. Again, no chart lesson on Friday. And I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll be back again to do it Monday. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.